Welcome live, Barn 4 Sports, Lexington, Kentucky, the inaugural podcast that everybody's been waiting for only about 4 or 5 years in the making. We had talked about it for years with a good friend of mine, Leon Sissel. We started moving forward on this thing and making progress, and he got sick all of a sudden on us, and unfortunately passed away a year later, and it set us back quite a bit. And here in the last 6 months, we've had some help from Black Mountain Strategy Group to get it going, and just want to say thanks to them. And a lot of hard work has gone into it. And Leon was on Twitter as Andy Popcat, and he had about 2,500 followers. And he was a UK football expert, and he put out a lot of good information, and he was passionate about his Kentucky Wildcat football team, and I tell you, he would be thrilled right now with what's going on down there. So that's kind of how we started, and I'm going to continue it on, and we're going to cover a lot of Kentucky stuff. We're going to try to cover some NASCAR, some golf, a lot of horse racing, and hopefully have a few good guests to come join us throughout the year. And I'm thrilled to get it started. I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, made my way to Lexington about 6, 7 years ago. Been here ever since, and we're looking to get started today with a couple guests, and we'll be talking about football. We'll be talking about some horse racing this weekend, coming live from the fairgrounds with the Risen Star, and just really excited. It's not going to be anything that surprises us around here. We'll have some wild guests, we'll have some tame guests, but super thrilled about it, and just excited with everybody's support with it. And again, Black Mountain Strategy Group has really jumped in for us, and for all your communications and marketing and video production needs, Black Mountain Strategy Group is our first sponsor here in the tavern, as we call the Hunter Valley Farm Tavern. But want to go ahead and get started with our first guest from all the way from DeSales High School in Louisville, Kentucky. Mr. Joe Federspiel is with us today. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you being number one here.
Yeah.
Today. First time I was number one in a long time.
Yeah. I didn't realize I had such a stud muffin with me. I looked you up, and you're an all-state for DeSales High School football player. I think you also played baseball and
basketball.
Played a little basketball for him, and then you made your way to the University of Kentucky. What other schools recruited you in football?
When I was being recruited out of DeSales High School back in 1968, Kentucky was big on getting in front of me, and then I had Tennessee was real hot coming up and all the time, coming to see games. I had some offers from Purdue, Indiana, Big Ten, sort of that big circle around Lexington, and had a couple letters from Alabama, Florida, but it was always between either Kentucky. I should maybe throw in Louisville there. Louisville was hot on the trail too, because I was right in their backyard. But
did you ever consider signing with Tennessee? Did they make a big pitch?
I did. I was ready to sign with them. I had another player at DeSales that he was being recruited by Tennessee too, and we were sort of a pair. I was an offensive guard and he was a running back, so we sort of really meshed real well. And he was going to Tennessee, and I tried to talk him into going to Kentucky, and he tried to talk me into Tennessee. I was all set to go to Tennessee, and then a coach got in the recruiting process, Charlie Pell. he could sell you last year's calendar. He was good, and I really liked him. And I liked another player at Kentucky, Dickie Lyons, who was a big all-star in Louisville and played at Kentucky. He was recruiting me, and at the end there, I decided on Kentucky.
Now, Dickie Lyons' son played it. He also played at University of Kentucky. Then Dickie Lyons Jr. had a real good career.
Yeah.
Did you feel any pressure to sign with University of Louisville?
Somewhat, but it was no comparison when you look at that time. This is, once again, 1968, at the facilities that U of L had versus what we had in at Kentucky. And also, the SEC was a big calling card, too, rather than OVC. I think they were in that division at that time.
Yeah, so the coach at the University of Kentucky that recruited you, was it the head coach? Was that John Ray?
John Ray. Well, let me back up. It was really Charlie Bradshaw.
Okay.
Charlie Bradshaw was the initial head coach at that time, and Charlie Pell was under Bradshaw. So
okay.
And Charlie Bradshaw, Coach Bradshaw, I mean, he was an intense, and everybody really liked him. He was a coach that you sort of feared but respected.
Yeah.
And when
did Charlie? Was he the main guy to recruit you, or did he have an assistant coach that kind of came in and laid the groundwork, and then Charlie came in for the kill?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Do you remember who that assistant coach was?
Well, it was Charlie Pell.
Okay.
Charlie Pell set it all up. And I guess the other biggest factor was I was all-state as an offensive guard as well as linebacker. And Tennessee wanted to give me a look at playing offensive guard, which I didn't really want to play at that time. And UK said, Joe, you come here, it's nothing but linebacker.
So you were all-state on both sides of the ball.
Sides.
Wow. I'd like to know how many people have done that in their careers in high school throughout the state. Probably not too many. I can't remember if Tim Couch played defense or not. For some reason, I thought he did, but I mean, he was a big old dude. But
it was for
quarterback.
Quarterback, yeah.
Yeah. Now, Alabama. Did you ever consider? Were they very serious with you, or did you have a chance to go down for a visit?
I think I never went there for a visit. I think I had a couple courtesy calls, and that was about it.
Yeah, and I guess at the time, still back then, they were head of the SEC back then. I guess them and Auburn and Tennessee were the top dogs.
Three,
yeah, well, that's something else. Well, you end up signing with University of Kentucky, and you made your way to Lexington, and I guess you've been here pretty much ever since until you went to the pros, but which we'll get into later. What about your time here in Lexington when you played? I know you had some special times here. What was did you play on any teams that were really, really good throughout your career here?
Well, that was one thing about my career at Kentucky. We didn't win a lot of games. The games that sort of stick out in my mind is, I think it was back in '69. At that time, freshmen couldn't play varsity football or any of the varsity sports. You had to wait a year. So it was my sophomore year, and we thought we had a pretty good team, and we did, but the record doesn't show it. We upset Ole Miss 10-9 that year, and they were number 9 in the country.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
Played well and went on and played some other teams real tough, but I want to say we only won about 2 games that year. And
best player you played against in the SEC in your career?
Best player? Well, that's a good question. I could say I could go back to Archie Manning. He was a running quarterback at that time. Mm-hmm. I could look and say Pat Sullivan. He was a Heisman Trophy winner.
Now, did Archie win the Heisman while you were? Did he never win the Heisman?
I don't think he.
Oh, wow.
He did.
Wow.
But we had Pat Sullivan, and we played them pretty tough here. They were in that top 5 that year.
Yeah, and I've seen you over the years. We go to the same gym here in Lexington Athletic Club. We've talked on several occasions, small talk, and I remember asking you one day, who was the guy that you just completely knocked his head off? Just that he would remember you to this day.
Well, the one I think that we talked about, and it was a funny story because we were at a football conference. This was when I was in the pros, but we went to this banquet, and there were players from all over the country and all over the sea, but there was a couple players that played in the SEC when I did. So it was my wife who got talking to this other lady, and they were talking, and they introduced each other, and my wife goes, "I'm Caroline Federspiel," and she goes, "I'm Mrs. What was his name? I'm trying to think of his name.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was a running back for Georgia. Anyway, when we played Georgia, he was running the ball, and he tried to jump up over the line, and I nailed him right with a tackle, got him right in the ribs, and did a body slam on him. And I broke about 3 ribs, and this is like 5 or 6 years later, and I did this. When my wife said who she was, she goes, "We hate your husband." We hate him every day because it took like 6. When you get a broken rib, it takes forever to get over it. And every time he breathed hard, he sneezed or he coughed, he goes, "Damn, bad." Better still.
Yeah, and I guess back while you were playing, you played with some other really good players. Did you play with some other players at Kentucky that made it to the next level like yourself?
Well, we had Bill Bushong at that time. He was a defensive tackle. He made it to the pros for a couple years. Danny Neal was an offensive center we had. He played for, I'm going to say almost 10 years, and then he coached in the NFL for about 10 years. We had Doug Kodar, who played a couple years with the Giants, Frank LeMaster, who's from right here in Lexington, and Tommy Ehlers. They were both linebackers. We had quite a few kids up there.
Now, you played at the old, is that Stall Field? Now, how many did Stall Field hold?
I want to say
10,000
on a real big day. If you filled up the end zone bleachers, we might get 28, maybe.
Yeah,
be pushing it.
Yeah. Now, were the stands full back in the day?
Full.
Always full?
Yeah, we always talk about back then in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, a college football game was a big deal. I mean, it was a date game. Yeah. Everybody seems like they had dates, and everybody dressed up to go to the
ball game.
Yeah, you could go out on a thing, and you'd see guys in coats and ties.
Now, were people tailgating, drinking, cooking, or was it more of a casual date?
I think there was all that.
All that going on.
We didn't have the big parking lots like they have right now. It was all blended in with the UK campus. And didn't see a lot of that. But
I'm sure. I never. I did a little research on you. I never did come across it. Were you captain at UK? Your senior year.
One year they were game captains.
Okay. Yeah.
And then one year I was captain.
Okay. Okay. Did you ever get suspended through your career? Never did anything out of
keep my nose clean. Yeah. One thing about playing back then, it was nice that everybody didn't have cell phones.
Right.
And, what we said was usually stayed there, but nowadays they got cell phones and people are recording you and videoing you, and you can't do anything anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between me and you. I stayed suspended more than I played. So you were All-State at DeSales High School. You move on to University of Kentucky, where you're AP All-American.
Yeah.
At University and all SEC. I believe you made the all-decade team in the SEC, and that's quite an accomplishment through the 70s with some of the players that they had, and you made that team, and then you were drafted
in the fourth
round, number 99 pick, I think, by the New Orleans Saints. Now, did they just call you at your dorm room? Did they call you at home, or how'd that work?
It's really different now. And when we got drafted, it wasn't this big deal that they have where they have the big draft day in Nashville or Atlanta or someplace there. It was usually a phone call, and you sort of knew who might be calling. But I thought I was going to be a Dallas Cowboy back then.
Oh, wow.
And because they came around the most, they were always over at the sports center looking and talking. And we didn't have what they have now, like the college day with the pros. We'd have some scouts come in and they'd tie me in a 40 and see how many push-ups you could do.
And I guess they were allowed to come into your practices and watch some practices and, of course, watch your games, and that's all they had to go by.
Yeah.
Now, when the Saints drafted you, I guess you were probably a little disappointed you weren't going to be a Cowboy, but when they drafted you back then, you usually stayed with that team, and there weren't a lot of trades before the season started as a rookie. Is that right?
Well, pretty much so, but I will say this. If you really look at my bio there, they'll say that I was originally going to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, and then the Eagles made a trade with New Orleans, and New Orleans got the 4th-round draft choice. So I came to New Orleans via a trade from Philadelphia, and like you said, once a team had you, you were usually there unless there was something they missed or you missed and you wanted out or they wanted out.
Now, did you take a bus down to New Orleans? Did you hitchhike? How did they get you down there?
They said we had training camp in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. You know, if you've ever been to Hattiesburg, it's pretty tough to get in back in 1968.
Right.
But anyway, they sent me a plane ticket, and it was a plane out of Bluegrass Airport. If you ever remember 1968 in Bluegrass, there wasn't a very big airport.
What was the name of that? What was the name of that airport? Somebody named a horse after it some years ago that I remember. The first name of that airport. But anyways, so you fly down to Hattiesburg.
It was me and the mail sacks, and I flew into Hattiesburg, it was out in the country. And if you ever, down south there in Mississippi, they got all those tall pine trees, and we flew in on this little plane, landed, and he kicked open the door and said, "This is Hattiesburg, Joe." And so I got out, and I'm standing there. The plane drops their bags and takes off, and I'm standing in the middle of nowhere. There's this little house over there. It's got the radar stuff in it, and I'm standing there going, "This is the NFL. Welcome to the NFL."
And then you were ready for, I guess that was summer camp.
Yeah, we had
the next morning.
Well, they came in and they run you through, a quick physical, make sure everything is working, and then it's not anywhere what they do this year.
Yeah.
It was,
That, were you nervous, butterflies?
Yeah.
Did any certain player take you under his wing and say, hey, young stud, you're going to have to do this and you're going to have to do this unless you're not going to be in this league very long?
Well, when you were in the 4th round, even though I was lucky to be the 4th rounder.
Signing bonus with that?
A little bit.
$500 or something?
Yeah. I got $1,000.
Yeah, that's big time.
That was a big time back then.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was every man for themselves in a lot of ways, because I'm playing to take somebody's job. And sort of like if I was trying to take your job right here, and all these other guys say, well, we like Mike here, and Joe sort of messing up the routine here. So you gotta fight your way in and stay there.
Absolutely. Now, your facilities, did they have you at a hotel altogether? Did they have you on a where did you stay?
We stayed on campus at Southern Mississippi. Yeah,
Okay.
Nice little campus there in Hattiesburg, and they all gave us rooms.
And that was that Coach North?
That was J.D. Roberts, Coach Roberts. And
Coach Roberts
was there for a couple of years, and then John North took over when he was fired. I bet I went through, in 9 years at New Orleans, I bet I had 6 head coaches.
Who was your favorite coach at New Orleans?
A guy named Dick Nolan.
Dick Nolan.
Dick Nolan was a longtime coach for the 49ers.
Okay.
And he was my John Wayne type coach.
Okay, and y'all, obviously you made it through camp. Did you take anybody's position?
I did. When I got to New Orleans, there were 4 middle linebackers in front of me, and all of them were veterans. Anywhere from 7 years in the league all the way down to 2 and 1. So I never really unpacked my bags until I knew for sure that I was going to be a part of it, and I had to work my way through the system there.
Yeah. So did you start as a rookie?
I did. I started probably the 5th game.
Yeah. Now, the first 5 games, and I believe y'all played at the old Tulane Stadium.
The old Sugar Bowl.
Your first 5 games. What about your first game? did it surprise you of the level of athletes even back then? I mean, and you were 6'2", 230, and that was really. That was
a good
big
size.
back then, you know, and I'm sure you had some speed. And if you started in the NFL, but did it surprise you your first few games? And I'm sure you thought, well, I'm all SEC and I'm this and that. I'm gonna come in here and bust somebody. How long did it take you before you felt comfortable that you could play at that level?
Well, I always thought I could play at that level, but it takes you a while to get used to the speed and the size of the players. And in high school and in college, you know, you might have a real good player, a great player, a bad player, an okay player, and you could, you know, sort of pick who these people are. But in the pros, they're all good. So you just, you know, pick your poison on some of that. And back then it was, and I say football was a very physical game, but back then it was more of let's establish the run and then we'll throw the ball.
Who was your quarterback?
Archie Manning.
Archie Manning.
Yeah.
And you and Archie probably remain friends to this day, I would think.
Pretty good friends. Right
Yeah.
now. Yeah. We call each other. We talk about UK playing Ole Miss. We talk what the Saints are doing. Plus, he's got a grandson that's everybody in the country wants. And we were going to talk about Joe Schlarman here in a little bit.
Yeah.
Joe's a player out at Lexington Catholic, and Archie and I always go back. I said, tell you what, Arch, I'll make you a deal. You send Arch up to Kentucky, and I'll send Joe down to Ole Miss.
Are they in the same grade?
Little Arch is probably he's a year ahead of Joe.
Year
He's a
ahead,
year
okay.
ahead of Joe.
Wouldn't that be something if they played against each other in college, just like you and Archie played?
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to meet. Do you call him Little Joe or
Just Joe?
just Joe?
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to meet him at Churchill Downs 4 or 5 months ago. He joined a friend of mine that had a horse running, and his son. They both go to school together, and you had told me about Joe, and I got to meet him, and just a fine young man. He could look you in the eye, shake your hand, and things you don't see a lot today. And I told you later on when I saw you how impressed I was with him. And he's a bigger kid, you know, and he's you can tell he's still young, and I think he's well on his way. Yeah, but first and foremost, you could tell he's been raised right, and we had we had some dinner, and I just spent the day with him, and it was a pleasure.
Well, he looks just like his dad, John Schlarman, and we all know the story about John. The
Absolutely.
Coach, okay? But Joe, he'd be so proud of Joe, and he looks just like him, and he plays just like him, and it's going to be a good story to watch.
Yeah, and he's got the pedigree not only from his father, John, he's got it from you too, and look forward to seeing how he develops, and hopefully he'll continue on and enjoy it. So your career with the Saints ends, and then you go to the Baltimore Colts for 1 year. Was that pretty much the same type of deal, or just kind of finishing out your career? Or
well, it was one of those things where I spent 9 years with New Orleans, and we had several coaching changes, but I was always in the mix and always playing. I was still playing well. Then we get a new coach my last year, going into my 10th year, and it's Bum Phillips from Houston. And it was a treat and very, amazing and funny and good, and to see a coach with he had a lot of personality. He was a good guy.
So Bum coached you, and
well, he didn't really coach me. He came in, and in training camp, he had his idea what offense and defense he was going to play. He had his players, and he brought some kids in from Houston and all that. And at that time, it was sort of like the perfect storm. The NFL was going through all this negotiation with the players and the owners and all that, and that was when we started seeing the big jumps in the pay salaries. And if they would say, if you play X amount of years, you get X amount of dollars, whether you're a starter or ride the bench every day. So I was my 9th year, and with the payroll structure, they were going into new payroll structure, and then my 9th year, and Bum being his first year, he brought in some younger guys from Houston and from the drafts, so I sort of knew what was cooking here. And they released me I guess it was the fall of '72, and then Baltimore picked me up, and I finished up at Baltimore.
Okay.
Before they moved to Indy.
Right, and of course, Bum went on to have a really good long career, and I guess he landed in Houston for a lot of years. I remember Bum as a kid over there in the cowboy hat and the sheepskin coat. It was
legit. He was cowboy.
Yeah, he was, and years later, his son Wade coached. I think he ended up coaching the Dallas Cowboys.
He was their defensive coach.
A brilliant defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there thinking, I go to the sauna a lot over there where we go, and I was sitting in there one day, and Buddy Ryan was sitting in there. I kind of looked over at him, and we were both sweating, not saying a word. And looked at him again, and I said, "You look familiar." And old Buddy, he'll look up and say, "Yeah, Buddy Ryan," and had an opportunity to talk to him for 30 minutes while we chatted, and his two sons were successful in the NFL, and I think they're the first father-son sons combination to have all of them have Super Bowl rings, in some form or fashion, head coach or assistant coaches. But
I don't think did Bum get one. I don't think Houston ever made it to this.
I'm sorry, Buddy Ryan. Ryan.
Buddy, yeah.
Yeah, Buddy got. You don't think Buddy got one?
Yeah, Buddy's got his Super Bowl.
Buddy and his two sons have Super Bowl rings as coordinators.
That,
but I was sitting in there one day with Buddy Ryan, and I know he had a farm up in Versailles.
Yeah,
Shelbyville for a lot of years. But he was he
loved the horses.
Loved the horses, and Buddy was just Buddy. I mean, he just was. That conversation that day, I'll remember. Just the football that he talked and the experiences. Just a short time, and I never saw him again. And he died shortly after that. So, but then you ended your career, and then. Were you wanting to try to get into coaching? Were you just going to take it easy? What were you going to head to next after you got out of Baltimore?
When I left Baltimore, I had my 10 years in, and I was satisfied. And it was one of those things where I knew it was time to go on. I was losing a step. Rather than being ready to play on Monday, it took to Friday to feel better and all that. And I just knew it was time to go. And I looked around, and at that time, I think Coach Claiborne was over at UK, and he had a staff, and I visited with him a couple of times, and I just said, well. And I asked one of the old pro coaches, I said, what's coaching like? And he goes, Joe, I tell you what, it's changed just like everything. If you want to move your family all over the country, say from L.A. to Maine to Florida back to St. Louis, get into coaching. Because, you're here today and gone tomorrow. And it's that transit. I said, well, I don't really want to do that. And he says, as a player, you make twice as much as a coach. You don't make much, and you travel, and you just put in a lot of hours. So I said, I think I'll go sell insurance.
Yeah, well, good. And now, even back then, and you don't have to go too much detail about it, do you still get a pension from the NFL today?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I got my 10 years in.
You got and you have to get your 10 years in to get a pension.
Well, it's a graded pension. Like I think the minimum was 4 years. If you get 4 years in, you get, let's just say, if you get 4 years in, and it's not based on your salary or anything like that. You get 4 years in. Let's say you get $500 a month for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And if you played 8 years, you get 800 and something, and if you play 10 years, it gets bumped up some.
Right.
So and then you still need to buy me stuff. It's not.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not what people think. Sometimes.
Yeah, and then you moved on and started selling insurance, and then I think maybe.
But I will say this, before that, just to keep my hand in football, I had a real good friend in the neighborhood that was a football official, SEC official. And I did officiate in the SEC for about 4 years, and that was an eye-opener there, too, trying to, all of a sudden you tried to break all the rules or stretch all the meaning of the rules, and now all of a sudden you have to enforce the rules.
Which coach, when you refereed, cussed you the best?
Well, at that time, Gene Stallings with Alabama, he's sort of scary looking. and Jackie Sherrill at Mississippi State.
Jackie Sherrill's scary looking today.
Well, he wasn't scary, but he always had this angry look on his face.
Yeah.
And he was always complaining. Always complaining. It could be, tomorrow's Sunday, Coach, and he would still, no, it's not. He wanted to argue.
Yeah. I would say Gene Stallings, I would probably give him the he looked the part over on the Bama sideline.
He looks like your dad when he gives you that one look like, I'm sorry, son.
Toughest call for you to make while refereeing, what was it?
Well, a lot of them, and I call it like going to the scene of the crime. All of a sudden you could have multiple fouls, you could have offsides, you could have illegal blocking, or you could have a personal foul, and all of a sudden live ball fouls versus dead ball fouls, and where you start and walk 10 yards and back 5 yards and walk another 10 yards. So, but I think one of the toughest is and I still talk a little bit about this. You think you see it's sort of I was a head linesman. And I was working the sidelines, and you see these sideline catches, and this guy's walking the tightrope, down the sidelines, and he gets hit, and you think what you do, you see him step on the white line, and then if you're on the team that caught the ball and he's doing it, the whole team rushed me and said, he's in. And I was going, no, he's out. Yeah, but after you see the coaches and you see all these players rush you, and you go, well, maybe I didn't see it the way I thought it did. You start all of a sudden you got to start. Yeah. You got to wait a minute. Just
start questioning yourself. Did you ever referee a national championship game?
No, never got that close.
Conference championship game, or they didn't even have conference championship games back then, did they?
Didn't have that. You just
had the conference.
But I will say, back in the day when, and it's still that day, you're talking about noise. You go to, I did an Alabama-Tennessee game at Tennessee, and you get 108,000 people in there, and they're yelling and screaming.
And they say the Tennessee fans are the complete worst fans in the conference, just spitting, cussing, throwing beer at you. I guess Fulmer was the coach when you were refereeing.
Well, it was. He was the head coach when I was officiating.
Yeah. Did he remember you as a player?
Yeah.
Did he play at Tennessee when you played at Kentucky?
Yeah.
Did you bust his ass?
I did.
Good.
I did.
Good. And later on, 2005, I think, you were inducted to the University of Kentucky Football Hall of Fame. Is that correct? Or 7? I can't remember what it was.
Yeah.
That's
a big
quite
deal.
an honor.
It is to be, as they say, as you get older, to be remembered.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to be remembered, as they say.
Now, they have a statue, kind of like the Hall of Fame in the NFL. They have a statue over at Kroger Field anywhere?
No, it's just a head plaque. And every once in a while you see a banner in there, along the coast.
So I guess they had a ceremony at halftime of one of the games.
They did.
That's super. That's quite an accomplishment. And even we talk about pedigree. Your son Mike went on to play. He actually went to high school with my daughter, and he went on to play at Western Kentucky.
He did
for a few years that I remember, and he was a really good player in high school, and he was a good player at Western before he moved on. I remember that. So, well, that's really good. What a career from top to bottom, from high school to the pros. Just a great career, and I know, just as I do, not that I had any career compared to that by any means, but just keeping up with some high school players that you played with is really fun, and I can't imagine how many guys that you keep in touch with today, and especially with text and tweets and all that you can kind of communicate with.
It's funny, since we're sitting here talking about, and we're talking about friends and acquaintance, and it's like I've been out of football maybe, say, 25 years or 30 years. I left when I was 32, and I'm 71 now. But I still consider some of those guys, it's sort of like going to war. you never forget certain scenes, certain people, and it's sort of like that. And then I guess the other thing is when you look back, it's the camaraderie you had and the people that you do, and still, like, I've been in the insurance business for like 30 years, but I'm still Joe Fed, the football player.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when guys call you, you can almost just pick up with the conversation like it was back in 1974 or 78. You just kind of just move on with hey, what'd you think about that game? What'd you think about this game? And but just a great career you've had. Did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did. I thought it was. I thought it'd be more scoring, but it was a good Super Bowl.
Usually it was a very competitive Super Bowl. That's exactly right.
I tell people my heart was with the Bengals and my money was with L.A.
with the Rams.
Patrick Stafford. He has a
Matthew.
Matthew Stafford. He has a nice, well, I shouldn't say a nice story about his wife was sick, and he was Georgia and SEC, and seems like a real nice guy.
He does, and he spent a lot of years suffering in Detroit and paid his dues, and when I first heard the trade, I got a friend that's been a long time Ram fan, and I called him and I said, hey, you got you a nice quarterback here. You'll have a shot anyways. And it's never fun to lose, especially on a consistent basis. It makes practices longer. It makes games not exciting, and winning cures all.
It really does.
It just does. It helps the locker room. It just helps with your home life and
off the field.
and what Joe Burrow's done is just super duper. Just after coming back from the injury, he had to face a defensive line that pressured him all game. And late into the third quarter, you kind of thought, well, the Bengals are going to bring home the trophy, and but the Rams stepped up on defense and put an end to that. But they were very competitive. I think the Bengals will be Super Bowl contenders as long as Burrow's there. I would think, wouldn't you?
I would think so, but to have those type of years is so hard. Everything has to come together. The injuries, your defense, your special teams, quarterback, wide receivers, and it's just so hard sometimes to get all the pieces to work the same way. But they certainly have the foundation to be in the mix every year for as long as Joe's there.
Yeah, I think so. And Dan Marino made it to the Super Bowl his rookie year, and he never made it back. So that goes to show just how hard it is to get to the big game, and you have to have surrounding players to help you out. And just like in basketball, the point guard is so important to have guys around you, just like the quarterback. And Stafford, he had some guys around him that could do some things like Cup. And
I'll tell you about certain players, a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp can do that, and you have a running back and you have a great defensive line. But I tell people, it's getting so old that I played football with Cooper Kupp's granddad. He was on New Orleans when I was on New Orleans.
Oh, nice.
And it's sort of a connection.
Yeah.
I don't know Cooper. I don't know even his dad.
Yeah,
but
that's
his
cool.
granddad and I were players together.
Everybody talks about pedigree with the horses, and it's no different with athletes. I mean, you can see in the NBA, NFL, college basketball kids playing that their dads were really good players, just as your son was a really good player too, and it looks like your grandson's well on his way to be an SEC player. So that's really cool. Yeah. And when you get together to watch the Super Bowl, do you want to get together with your buddies? Do you want to get together with your family? Do you want to be by yourself? I like to watch it just with a few friends and turn it up as loud as I can.
That's about the way.
I'd rather not be at a Super Bowl party. Been there, done that. But it's just, I like listening to it.
I'm like that if I could. I've done it a couple times, like even a regular football game, UOK's. I'd love to go over and tailgate mess around and talk and then get the feeling of the game. And then when it starts, go home and watch it on TV. So
Absolutely.
I can watch it the same way with the Super Bowl. I like to party, but when it starts, I like to, keep your distance.
Yeah. Now, do you make your way over to the practices any, or how does that work with former players? I always wondered when a new coach comes in, and Coach Stoops has been here for
about 6-7 years.
8-9 years now. But when a new guy comes in, does he reach out to former All-Americans as yourself? Do you have to go over and knock on a door, or can you just wave to him through a fence, or how does that work?
Well, the way most of it does was a coach that you don't know, and I didn't know Mark from when he got here.
Yeah.
A lot of times you just go over and introduce yourself, or you'll meet him through a cake function or something, and he's always had an open door for former players.
Yeah.
And so I could go over there anytime I want to and watch practice and talk to things. And I've done that a couple times, but I try to stay out of the way. It's sort of like a doctor who's a surgeon that does all that every day to go back in and watch somebody else do it. Unless I want to learn something or see something different, I usually don't go much.
You don't go over and mess with them? Well, I just think with a former all SEC, all decade player in SEC, I would want a guy like you around some new young guys. Yeah. Just telling them, hey, you need to work a little harder. You need to do this. You need to do that. I would just prefer to have some guys around. And with Cal, I think Cal welcomes a lot of his players to practices. I think they can just, I know Goose Givens, he goes over there quite a bit. Kenny Walker, but especially if you're All-American, I would like to have you guys around just to help the younger guys.
I had a coach tell me this once, and this was when I was sort of thinking about being a coach. Certain coaches sort of like a head coach, and I know football as well as they know football, but I don't know Coach Stoops' way. And for me to come in there, it'd be like starting over. This coach said, Joe, I know you know football. I know you all the linebacker. You know all the techniques. But the way we teach it might be entirely different than how you would teach it. Now, I would have to train you, and then you would have to, relate. So a lot of times, being in the system and all that, it's nice to go say, how you doing? Good. You can do it if you want to, but that's about where I leave it.
Seeing the young guys today and how the game is compared to when you played, and again, I mean, I've watched you strut through the gym, and you look like an athlete today. You do. I mean, you're in shape, and you can tell, like, man, that cat used to be, he used to do something. You can tell.
I got some scar tissue on me.
Yeah, but like, compare the guys today to when you played. I know they're faster and they have more to work with. Their diet's better, blah blah blah. But you still have to have a good football sense of what's going on.
Yeah, you got the instinct. I call it instinct.
Yeah.
And so you can be a great athlete, but if you don't have that instinct or that little, like a quarterback does, he can just feel it. And if not, sometimes it can get you cut.
Who was the coach or player that was most instrumental in your playing days, whether it was at DeSales High School, whether it was UK, New Orleans, or Baltimore? Who do you think you got the most information out of that you
I think
learned from?
Well, one of them was the Dick Nolan at the Saints at New Orleans. He got there about my third year, but I always go back to my high school coach, and he was I call it like a architecture. He was he was one of these guys that always thought things through, and he really had a good grasp of football. Yeah. And he really worked you. I was ready to play on Friday nights, and he gave me that training and the knowledge of good fundamentals, and it just sort of carried me all the way through.
Good. Yeah. All right, Coach, man, we really appreciate you stopping by. You can follow us on Twitter at TheBarn4 Sports, and you can like us on Facebook at TheBarn4 Sports. And we'd love to have you back maybe in the fall and talk about some of the top 20 teams and talk about how the Kentucky team's going to prepare for the upcoming season. But it's been a pleasure. You've had a great career again it's just really it's impressive talking to an All-American and an All-Pro NFL player, and you carry it well, and you've always been nice to me throughout the years, and I certainly appreciate it, and I appreciate you joining us here on Barn 4 Sports.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for our first podcast. Hope you can join us again coming up soon. We have the twin 125s tonight live from Daytona. That'll set the qualifying for Sunday's Daytona 500. And then from New Orleans, we have the Risen Star Derby Prep. They have plenty of graded races down there that we'll be following up on and giving out some picks for the weekend. And thanks again for joining us, and thanks again to Joe Federspiel here at the Barn 4 Sports.